I'm sure that you've heard everything this morning, and I've heard it too. Kamala Harris didn't secure the necessary votes in the key states she needed most to fend off the horror of another Trump presidential term this morning. But if you are listening to this right now on this gloomy, dark, and sad day for America, just know that we did everything among our capacity to protect the right to vote, to protect women's reproductive health, to protect Social Security and Medicare, to protect the ability and free will to disagree with someone without being viewed and treated as an outcast, as an enemy within, to protect the law, the sanctity, the sanity, the environment, unions, the economy, paid leave, our allies, our faith, our freedom, our children, our seniors, our principles, the true character of our country, and so much more. Kamala Harris didn't lose this election. America lost this election. Kamala Harris could have been completely flawless and ran a completely impeccable campaign, and she still would have not won this election. Part of me, even deep down, believes that it was because she was a woman. After all, my dad did say that America is still not ready for the first female president. And he was right. We accomplished so much in this campaign. We had faith in our country. And we should take nothing for granted. Nothing. I did my part as just a 17-year-old who happened to fall 1 year short, just 1 year short of being eligible to cast my ballot. But nevertheless, I fought. I tried. I used my voice and helped educate and inform many of the importance of this crucial, integral election. And I regret nothing. I even donated a total of $50 to her campaign in donations and contributions. I knew that we had a chance, but that we were still the underdogs and were struggling to keep up with Trump in the polls. Unfortunately, the polls were right. Throughout the campaign, Donald Trump broke every low imaginable. Everything I was taught was wrong as a child, as a young child, and instead of being punished or put in timeout, he got elected President of the United States, the highest office in the world. He called Kamala Harris names, insulted her and us, attacked immigrants that aspire to simply just have a better life and be treated with dignity. He disparaged the American people every single day. He talked about Arnold Palmer's genitalia. And those are just during the last few days and weeks alone of this campaign, which he did all throughout the trail. It was revealed and confirmed by his own former campaign team that when Trump was president and Americans were hunting desperately to find COVID tests, dying in the process, he sent tests over to Vladimir Putin and helped the people of Russia while abandoning us in the middle of a once-in-a-century pandemic. He was impeached twice. He was found liable for sexual assault. He was indicted 4 times and found guilty on all 34 counts of business fraud. He incited a violent, deadly mob that soiled the inside and outside of our Capitol building, assaulted police officers, and almost succeeded in staying in power, all because he couldn't take a loss in the last election just 4 years ago. And for the last 4 years, he has took full advantage to undermine and discredit our democratic process and the results of the election 4 years ago. Despite having no problem with the outcome of this election, because he won only. All of a sudden, the Trump supporters' claim of voter fraud have now evaporated in thin air, because they claim it's only fair if and when they win. Ironic how you hear nothing about election fraud now that Trump was projected to win this morning. From both sides, nothing. That's because we know how to respect the free will of the American people and take a loss, even if it hurts like hell. Even if that will is digging their own graves, which it will do in the future. And I just want to say, I am beyond disappointed, heartbroken, nauseous, frustrated, confused, weary, despondent, sad, scared, debilitating, and disheartened beyond measure. This election, regardless of the outcome, should not have been close, both in terms and regards of his character and his policies. Historians ranked Trump as the single worst president in American history, time and time again. But history wasn't on our side. Over 400 economists endorsed Kamala Harris in her bid to become the first woman president after a long 250 years of struggle, desperate for triumph, because they have cautiously reviewed both Harris's and Trump's sparsely contrasting proposals for the economy. They warned us far before Election Day that Trump's unknown percentage of tariffs alone that he plans to propose on other countries will spark a recession by just the middle of next year. His first year in office, raise taxes on the average American by $4,000. It will inflate the deficit, rebound inflation, shatter the economy, and be a burden on hardworking Americans, all while making sure that the rich get more tax cuts. If you voted for Donald Trump or supported Donald Trump in this election, you have made a grave mistake. And I am truly ashamed of you. You voted against your own best interests. Now America, all of us, will face the consequence. I am rest assured that I know within the bounds of my heart, I did everything I could to help Kamala win, to help democracy prevail when the world was watching us. I, along with millions of Americans, created unprecedented success. My mom, a two-time Trump voter, proudly cast her vote for Kamala Harris. My step-great-grandfather, who is a lifelong conservative Southern Republican, I just found out he shockingly cast his vote for Kamala Harris. Even though he might not align with everything she stands for, he knows that the future of our country, the Constitution, the basic decency and dignity of our nation depended on it. There was millions of Republicans who voted their conscience in this election, even though we fell short, including Congresswoman Liz Cheney, her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, Arnold Schwarzenegger, more than 200 Republican former administration staffers, more than 700 current and former national security officials, former Republican Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, and I even want to give a shout out to all the former Trump administration officials who endorsed our campaign, putting their country and their morals over their party. The people who worked closest with Donald Trump know how big of a danger he is and was to our country. The reason Donald Trump prevailed is the reason I feared and dreaded all along. The young, white, first-time voters with a lack of education swung out to vote for him. A lack of understanding on how the economy actually works, a lack of knowledge on the stakes of their decisions. Unlike the first term, I believe Donald Trump this time will fulfill on most of his promises. His promises to get rid and dismantle the Department of Education, hurdle more tax breaks to only the rich and the ultra-wealthy, which hurts our economy, stand and side with dictators instead of our allies, pardon thousands of insurrectionists that tried to overturn the results of the free and fair last election, reverse all of our success that we made under the Biden-Harris administration, like the Inflation Reduction Act, which capped out-of-pocket cost on insulin for folks on Medicare at $35 a month, the CHIPS and Science Act, which led to semiconductor production that offshored during Trump's presidency being brought back in America, the American Rescue Plan, which saved over 200 multi-employer pension plans, including the Teamsters pension and the Mine Workers Union pension. The bipartisan infrastructure law, which announced funding for over 60,000 infrastructure projects, by rebuilding our nation from American-made materials and supply. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which has established the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention that was actually overseen by our candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris. This bill broadened the category of gun sellers required to become licensed dealers and run background checks. This also included the first ever federal gun trafficking straw purchasing law, which has allowed the Department of Justice to charge more than 500 defendants as a result of this landmark and transformational bill. In 2023, we've seen the lowest rates of violent crime in more than 50 years in America. Now the struggles that will inevitably ensue, we have warned all along. Donald Trump's second term will not be like his first. It'll be much worse and despicable. He's completely unhinged, unfit, unstable, and unchecked. Unlike his first term, he had people to actually restrain him and rein him in from his worst impulses and tendencies. For example, when he wanted to place a nuke on hurricanes to disrupt them, when he wanted to pull America out of NATO, when he wanted to wait longer than he already did to speak out and condemn the rioters that he had provoked to storm and breach the Capitol building, when he wanted to shoot migrants in the legs to slow them down and maim them, or when he refused to provide FEMA relief initially to communities devastated by the aftermath of wildfires only because they happened to be in a Democratic state of California. Those people that surrounded him in his first term will not be there this time in his second. There will be no guardrails because he will stack his cabinet with yes men, loyalists, and diehards who stood by every unspeakable act he has done and said for not only the last 4 years, but in some cases the last 8 years. With Trump at 78 years old, a vote for him is also a vote for J.D. Vance, who is second in line, one heartbeat away from the presidency, which terrifies and disrupts me beyond belief. Donald Trump, during the campaign, became the first ever presidential nominee in history to refuse to release his medical records, while again being the oldest presidential candidate in American history. He refused to take place in a second debate with Kamala Harris because he knew that he cannot defend his record in front of the American people. And he lost the first one to her. He became the first presidential candidate in half a decade to not sit down one-on-one with 60 Minutes and express his campaign. And he spent most of the campaign trial hiding, exhausted, he said. Kamala Harris was the most qualified candidate for president in modern era, having 21 years of experience in public service as Vice President, United States Senator, California Attorney General, and District Attorney Prosecutor of San Francisco. What did Donald Trump have? A detestable 4 years in the White House and was given $400 million from his dad, all while managing to still go bankrupt 6 times? Words cannot describe how gutted I feel, especially since we have just lost Sherrod Brown in the United States Senate as well, to a grifter by the name of Bernie Moreno, who stole his employer's overtime fees and ran on false ads that were proven to be illegitimate and not true by independent fact checkers. All of his ads. Not some, every single one. I seriously feel hopeless in this country. And I'm not afraid to say that at this point. Our country has become unrecognizable. Not only just because of the results of this election, but because of how much support a guy who has the traits of the literal Antichrist has. I've never seen in my entire life a politician with such a cult-like following. People who believe him over fact checkers, historians, the facts themselves, his own political staffers, political experts, economists, and everyone else. From the bottom of my heart, Kamala Harris deserved to win this election for us. But the hatred and bigotry prevailed. Now is the time you can call United States a failing nation. A nation that is about to go back 50 plus years in the past, enact harsh, unfair policies, and have leaders that don't stand up for us, but stand up to protect special interests, corporations, and billionaires. If you, like me, were involved in this campaign, God bless you. The feeling you have and the discouragement you may possess are held by many across the country. Just know that you are not alone. I don't know what else to say.